When a child is diagnosed with a severe illness, it is not only the child who is affected. Hannah Clark will show us why.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hannah Clark, and I'm going to be talking to you about the impact of chronic illness on families. And we're going to begin by sharing a personal story. November 30th, 2009 was a day my life changed forever. I was laying in bed one night when my hand started to shake, and I couldn't control it. Before I knew it, the shaking spread to the rest of my body. My father was very alarmed, and he brought me to the emergency room in the wee hours of the morning. After 4 or 5 hours of agonizing waiting, finally we saw the doctor, who said, "It's just a panic attack. It'll pass." But it didn't pass. This so-called panic attack lasted for 6 months straight, and I got no relief from it unless I went to sleep. I felt very alone. Doctors were all telling me there is no physical explanation for your problem. It must be in your head. You must be crazy. And I felt like they had given up on me before they had even given me a chance. In turn, we gave up on them. We stopped going. It was basically a waste of our time. My family didn't know what to do for me, and I didn't know how to tell them what I was going through. This is what illness can do to family, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. My goals in the research were to look at both the physical and the emotional effects that arise from illness. While the physical ones are often the most talked about and the most prevalent, the emotional effects are the ones that can be the most damaging. I also wanted to relate my own personal experience to actual research. Is this incident something isolated, or does it happen across the world with many different diseases? I also wanted to demonstrate my passion for the medical field and for Christ. Having this illness, having this experience, gave me the passion that I needed to really go into the medical field and realize, is this really where God wants me? After completing my research, I feel that yes, that's exactly where He wants me. I performed some service while I was researching this, and my mentor was Dr. William Turtle. He works at Pediatric Associates in East Providence, Rhode Island. He has a typical office, and I was able to sit on patients with him, perform strep cultures and flu tests, and I was able to interview some of the parents as well. One girl I met, her name was Ella, and she had cerebral palsy, and she was 12 years old. I was able to talk to her mother about what impact it had on her family. She mentioned they couldn't go out as much because they needed a lot of outside help. She also needed someone to constantly feed her, to even change her diapers at 12 years old. Someone had to constantly be with her, caring for her. And that had an immense burden on the mother. But also, it brought the family closer together because they had a trial that they were going through. This is a typical room in his office. I would usually stand by the table over there. Dr. Turtle would sit in the chair to the far left while he performed consultations with the patients. I really wanted to get down to the basics when I was doing my study. What is the impact that arises from illness? 3/4 of the effects of disease can be fought off by the human body, because the human body has some of the greatest natural defenses in our world today. But still, some illnesses can break through that barrier, and some can cause pain, such as arthritis or fibromyalgia. Others can cause partial or total disability, as with multiple sclerosis or muscular dystrophy. I actually wrote a research paper on muscular dystrophy, so I'll be talking about that a little bit later. But physical illness can also hinder one's ability to go about daily life. Say there's a mother, and she has 4 children and a husband. She cooks for them every single night, without fail. However, when she's in her 40s, she begins to feel signs of arthritis. In a few years, the pain gets so severe in her hands, she can't even cook anymore. Who takes on that role? Is it the father, maybe the daughter, maybe even the son? No matter who it is, the lifestyle has been totally changed, and they have to work around this ill person. And then I wanted to look more at the emotional effects that arise from illness, because I knew some about it from my own personal experience, but I wanted to see what else was out there. Emotional impacts of illness include broken hearts and broken relationships. It has been shown that 75% of marriages plagued by chronic illness can end in divorce. It can cause great depression, cause self-harm. This is often what causes the separation in the first place, because the person who is sick feels neglected, feels that the person is not doing anything right for them, while the person who's not sick is doing everything they can to please the sick person. but there's miscommunications and just it's not going well. It can cause a lot of loneliness and abandonment. I felt very lonely when I had my illness. But this abandonment is not always intentional. Some doctors may look at every single explanation, leave no stone unturned, and they find nothing wrong. So they have to go the mental route. They have to ask, could there be something more to this? Could it be something mental? But this comes across as very patronizing sometimes. You don't want something to be mentally wrong with you. You want a physical problem that can be fixed. And anxiety can also worsen the physical symptoms. So my thesis statement for my research paper was this. Muscular dystrophy is a life-altering disease that causes the manifestation of devastating symptoms that take the victim on a journey of diagnosis, treatment, and learning to cope, and negatively affects the caregivers of the victim who have to rededicate their lives to an entirely new purpose. But the outcome does not have to be so bleak, and families can in fact become closer and stronger through the tribulation of illness. I've been talking about the negative effects a lot, and it's true, they are very prevalent and they are very strong. But there's also a positive side to illness. It can bring people closer together. I researched the second most common form, which is myotonic muscular dystrophy. It affects approximately 1 in every 8,000 people in our world today. I learned about the basic symptoms, such as myotonia, muscle weakness, cardiac arrhythmias, and about other diseases it can cause, such as hypothyroidism, which is the underproduction of thyroid, and diabetes mellitus, which where the pancreas cannot produce enough insulin. And I also learned about the basic treatments. This disease is incurable because it is caused by a mutation in one chromosome and is irreversible. So there are various medications used to control the symptoms, such as things that control the cardiac arrhythmias, the irregular heartbeats, or things that ease the muscle pain. I also learned about the personal stories involved with this disease. I felt this was very important for the emotional aspect of my paper. And I want to share one quote with you that I found that really stuck with me. It was from a scholarly journal from a man who had Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Duchenne is very similar to myotonic, only it is the most common form in the world and affects only males. Many males who have it only live to be in their 20s, so it is definitely a very debilitating disease. And this was the quote that he said. I rarely spend time thinking about my health or what will inevitably be my premature death. Instead, my thoughts focus on my social isolation, my exclusion from adult relationships enjoyed by other people my age, my lack of access to employment. Uppermost in my mind is a general feeling that my life is not going anywhere and that my potential is being wasted. Too often, young men are being dismissed as difficult to help and unlikely to reach adulthood anyway. So as you can see from that quote, this man was devastated about this illness. But what mattered to him was not what was happening to him. It was not that he had this illness, that he had this pain, all these symptoms. It was what wasn't happening for him. He couldn't live a normal life, and that devastated him. He couldn't do things that we, as normal human beings who are healthy, take for granted each and every single day. I talked about this a little bit already, but I want to tell you why I chose this topic. I really chose it out of my personal story. It gave me a love for the medical field. But it wasn't just my story. My older sister Lydia was diagnosed with Lyme disease when she was 18 years old. She still suffers from it today at 23 years old, 5 years later. It caused devastating neurological symptoms, and many doctors thought she must be crazy, there's nothing wrong with her. Blood work was normal, scans were normal, until finally one doctor knew something had to be wrong with her, that it wasn't just something mental. He performed what's called a SPECT scan, and it showed widespread brain damage consistent with Lyme disease. So through this, she was able to get treatments for it and everything, but she still suffers from it because it went undiagnosed for so long. So her story also gave me the passion for that, because I want to be that doctor, I want to be that nurse who finds what's wrong, who is persistent. It also gave me the passion for the medical field that I have today, and it had a great impact on me. It also has a great amount of value, spiritual value in particular. It is part of God's calling to show compassion to others, as 1 Peter 4:9-10 says. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another, as good stewards of God's varied grace. So because we are God's servants, and because we are His stewards, we are to do this for Him. Our calling is to share His joy. Our calling is to show compassion as He did. Many doctors and nurses tend to be very impersonal with their patients, remain emotionally detached, try and get the job done. That's not always a bad thing, but there must be a balance. This project also gave me a lot of perspective. We often take our health for granted, and we often take God's power for granted, when in reality, with the snap of a finger, He could take our lives away. Its impact on me was that it was an eye-opener to how much illness really is in this world. Even in America, where technology has advanced exponentially, illness still plagues us. It gave me great direction as well and gave me motivation. It showed that I really do want to work with children when I go into medicine, and it kept me motivated to keep my grades up in order to get into a great nursing program. It also gave me compassion and it gave me confidence. The compassion was for other people. It really gives me a love for the medical field. It gave me confidence in myself in order to achieve this goal, in order to believe in myself. Romans 8:28 says this, "And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose." With that verse in mind, I wrote a poem, and I'm going to share that with you now. A young girl looks out of her window, watching each car pass her by. Her eyes have lost their spark, and her spirit has died. The day had started on a cold November night. Her body began to tremble, and it filled her with fright. Every doctor dismissed her. Each day ended in tears, and her body still shook. Nothing could assuage her fears. That young woman was me, a desperate soul searching for hope. I was confined to my own home, and I felt very alone. But the Lord has shown me, through every laugh and every tear, that everything works together for good, for all of those who would hear. Today I stand before Him, a new woman filled with fire, and I will do whatever He asks, anything that He requires. For He is my Savior and He is my Lord, and because of His saving grace, I rest assured. So what now? After hearing all this, what do? We often ask questions. We ask, why do bad things happen to good people? Why does God let us suffer? When in reality, this makes us lose our focus. The whole goal here, the whole thing that we're called to do is to remedy issues, not just ask questions about them. We're called to do something. And you can do something about this issue whether you're part of medicine or not. Sometimes the best treatment for illness is just being there for someone. It's just to have someone to talk to have a shoulder to cry on. So take some time out of your day to go visit a sick friend, spend some time with them, or go to a nursing home. Sometimes we never know how much it makes those people's day when a young person comes out just to hear their stories, just to talk to them about their day and get their mind off what they're feeling. We are called to share God's great gift of joy, and I challenge you to do that starting today. Thank you.